the reason I am here today is that I'm also the super search writer for AADL. I will say super search fans are the nicest fans, as I am also the person who answers most of the super search help emails that come through, and I tell you, A+, y'all do a great job. But I'll give you a little bit of background, which is where on earth did these come from? I am a big puzzler, so crossword puzzles is really more my go-to word puzzle. And so every year, the New York Times puts out a big puzzle insert every December. And you have to, unless you are already one of those people who gets a print copy on Sundays, you actually have to special order it. But I knew, so I ordered it. And in 2022, the puzzle packet came, bought it for the crosswords. But on the cover, it has this beautiful puzzle. And so after I did the crosswords, and I still have this newsprint, I decided, all right, well, let's do this thing that they are calling a Super 7 search. And I did it, and it was so much fun. And I said, all right, got to find more of these. And I started looking, and I couldn't find anything. And I said, I am a librarian. I essentially have a master's degree in Googling. If I can't find these, maybe they're not out there. And I emailed the New York Times, and I never heard back from them. And then I said, you know what? I work for a library that lets us do really cool things. I wonder if I can write one of these puzzles, and if I do, maybe it can be part of the summer game. And so on my spare time, I did my first attempt to make a super search. It started out really messy. I started out first on graph paper, just drawing it out. And then when I made my first puzzle, I tried to make a grid. And as you can see, it's like almost dizzying looking at it. I used Affinity Designer, but I am not a graphic designer by any means. And so I gave this to some people, and they tried it, and they said, yeah, it was fun, but it was kind of hard to follow. And eventually I learned tools to make it neater. But I will say graphic design is still not my strong suit. I've had a few people, including one person here, who has emailed me and said, hey, I'm making my own puzzles. And when I sent them my blank grid, they worked some magic so that they could make it easier to use. So know that feel free to take any of these empty grids today if you want, but there may be better tools than what I'm able to provide you. So eventually it did get neater, and then it became part of Summer Game, and it ended up being a really successful thing. People were really into it. This slideshow I actually made in between 2023, when we first did it, and this last summer, so all of my examples are going to be from those 2023 puzzles. But it was really neat to see that people really liked it, and people did start emailing and asking, where are more of these puzzles? And then I had to break it to that, well, unfortunately, there aren't more, but you could join me in emailing the New York Times and see if they'll make more. And people did, and no one heard back. And then the New York Times this last year came out with Strands, which is similar to this idea. It translates really nicely to a short little daily mobile game. And that told me they're never going to make more of these. So in addition to, I promise you, I will keep making them. So they will, as long as I'm with the library, they'll still be part of the summer game. But perhaps you all might be interested in making them too. Because what I found was that while, yes, doing a puzzle is a lot of fun, making a puzzle uses similar parts of your brain. And it is kind of a puzzle in itself. In some ways, it's more frustrating and more interesting because there are multiple possible solutions, but perhaps you can also get yourself into a corner where there are no possible solutions. But it is satisfying when you finish, and it's even more satisfying if you finish and then you have a way to share it with people. So I'm so grateful that I assume, if you're here, you all were players, and I'm so glad I got to share them with you. So now I'll walk through kind of how you approach this. Feel no need to take notes. I have the steps all written out that I will give to you that you can take. But my mom teaches public speaking, and she said to me when I was younger, if you're giving a talk and you have handouts, that say what you're going to say. Don't give them to people until you're done saying it. So I'll give it to you when I'm done saying it, and then you've got it. So the very first step is to select categories and brainstorm potential words for those categories. What I found is really helpful is making sure at least one of those categories has a pretty clear, limited set of words. And by that I mean something like months of the year, planets in the solar system, zodiac signs, something with a pretty limited set that someone could go and find that list and then treat that like a word search. So especially early on, as our players were learning what these puzzles were and how to approach them, it was really helpful to have that tip of start with that limited set and look for the words in that. From there, I kind of try to have a balance in each puzzle, even though I know like it is not cheating to Google to try to find your answers in a super search. Not cheating. I'm the one who makes them. I'm telling you, Googling is A-okay and encouraged. But it's still nice to have some categories in the puzzle that you think someone will be able to know all the words in at least one of them. So pop culture like Disney princesses, science like names of reptiles, geography, countries in any particular region, food, types of vegetables, though these food categories can be really tricky because things like vegetables that some people may think of as vegetables may not technically scientifically be made as, and you start to learn if you are making these puzzles for any mass audience to try to find all those loopholes and close them ahead of time if you can. And then also to tell you to enjoy, but be aware of puns. You may notice if you played in 2023 and in 2024, there were a lot fewer categories with punny answers like things that fly in this last set of puzzles as the set before. And that was for two reasons. One is that puns are a lot of fun, but they're also more challenging for folks who English is not their first language. So many puns are based in idioms and things like that, that how on earth are they supposed to know, unless you're hanging out with someone who uses a lot of idioms, what those puns are, and they're harder to Google as well. They're also harder for those loopholes, because you get a lot of things that are technically correct, but not really in what the theme or the heart behind the category was, and so those ended up causing some confusion. But they're also a lot of fun, so think about it. I'm not saying don't do them. You had a question?
What about not really a pun, but a word that has more than one meaning? Like in this past one, run, it could mean to propel yourself with your legs like a cheetah, or to operate an electric motor, or
exactly. So just in case, I know if folks are watching on the stream, they're only hearing what's going in this microphone. So even though you all probably heard because you enunciated beautifully, I'm going to repeat, they asked, what about words that have more than one meaning? And you used the one example of puns I did in 2024, which was things that run, because run could mean physically running like a cheetah, or running like operating like refrigerator. And I did, both of those were words that I used in it, and I do think it's fun, but again, that makes it one more step complicated. Puns and double meanings are pretty, they're baked into word games. If you think about crosswords, if you are a crossword player, talking through when you get stuck what each of the potential meanings of this word are a big piece of it. I, again, tried to not do them as often, particularly for our summer game crowd, because we have such a wide age range of players, and because many of our players have a real completionist in them. And I both appreciate and understand as a completionist myself, but we would get people who felt the need, I gotta get this badge because it's a badge that it's offered, but it's torture for them because they don't get or understand the game. So it's trying to find that balance there. So while you're brainstorming words, list way, way more words than you'll actually need, because you need options. Putting together a super search is kind of like putting together a jigsaw puzzle. But a jigsaw puzzle where you have pieces that can click into multiple places, and you have some pieces that don't fit, and you have way more pieces than you'll have for your end puzzle. And that's a good thing. You want the way more pieces. And write them down And don't throw them away when you're done with your puzzle, because pretty much every puzzle I've written, in fact, every puzzle except for one, has involved needing to go back and redo it multiple times. And going back to that list of potential words makes that step so much easier. Make note of short words, whether or not you plan to use them. Short words are a really good tool to have for a super search, especially as you're getting close where your grid is getting full and you only have a word or so in a couple categories that has to go back in. Those short words can help give those gaps. But the short words also sneak into your puzzle a lot. This happened to me several times in 2023. I think about the very first puzzle of 2023, one of the categories was common or classic board and card games. And one of my words that was an intended word in the puzzle was Uno. Perfect, short. It snuck into the puzzle a second time. And not only did I not see that it was in there twice, neither did the probably 40 people who had play tested it. But you know summer game players found it. And I'm so glad they did, but of course at that point then it's too late. I can't pull the puzzle back and fix it. So to take that extra time to make note of what some of those words that might sneak in either unintentionally or show up twice is really helpful. Also watch out for words within words. So for example, if a category was states, you could put Virginia in your puzzle, but you can't put West Virginia in your puzzle because West Virginia also contains the state Virginia, and that gets messy and confusing. This happened to me a few times, especially in that first year of puzzles. These ones I think were all caught by playtesters before they made it to the public, but I can't promise that. There was one puzzle where I had the category of literary awards, and I had the category of dog breeds. And the word Pulitzer contains the dog breed Puli, P-U-L-I. And unfortunately, there were so few literary awards, I actually had to completely take dog breeds out of the puzzle and put in a different category and swap things out because I had to use Pulitzer. You also have to worry about words that could fit, that have more than one meaning, that fit multiple categories. So the very first puzzle I made had fish and colors. And I had the word salmon in the puzzle, which could have been either. Another one that playtesters caught, that first puzzle got pretty much scrapped. But that's, you know, just like pilot episodes of shows sometimes don't air. That's kind of the way I look at that first one. I've also found that it is helpful to list the words in alphabetical order. That's also for that when you go back to troubleshoot. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. I have, for when we get to actually making a puzzle, if you don't want to take the time to think up all of your categories right now, I have a set of 6 with words already brainstormed so you can start making. I pulled these from puzzles I've done the last 2 years. And you'll notice some of them I put in alpha order and some of them I didn't. It takes a little more work because, of course, you're not brainstorming in alphabetical order unless your brain works that way, which, wow, you're probably amazing at word games if it does. But it is helpful to go back to that. And then remember to use lists. Just like it's not cheating to Google to solve these puzzles, it's also not cheating to Google to find them yourself. And in fact, even if you have already written it, you've already put your 6 words in one category, it's worth looking up a list of these things to make sure that there aren't words that you didn't realize fit your category that are in your puzzle. And I found that Wikipedia has a lot of good lists, especially for categories that are very specific sets. So things like European countries. None of them are going to be left out on that list. Or systems in the human body. All of those are going to be listed. So to remember to use your resources. And then when it comes time to place words, so you've got your 6 categories with way more than 6 words brainstormed if you can manage. First and most important thing is to use pencil. Even though I say I have one puzzle, puzzle 10 of this last year, my play testers found nothing wrong with. But it certainly wasn't every word I wrote down was in the spot where I said it would be when I started. You're always going to need to rearrange, and so pencil with a good eraser is very key. Start with a long word that you know you want to use. So I'm actually going to temporarily switch over to this document cam, and I feel very fancy that I can do this. But I have a list here of 6 categories. Like I said, they're from puzzles, either from 2023 or 2024, so I could skip the brainstorming word step because my past self took care of it. And I've got a blank grid. So you also want to start with, or be mindful of your categories that have very limited number of words. So in this list, Disney princesses, a shorter list and a limited number, and months of the year. I can't make something else up that fits those categories. Those are closed. So you want to try to place some of those sooner. Otherwise, you're looking to kind of divide between your categories pretty evenly as you go. I usually pick one corner of a grid to start, and knowing this, you may be able to, in doing future puzzles, you may be able to guess what corner I started in. I don't always choose the same one, but there tend to be more overlaps and shared letters at the beginning of the puzzle when you have so much room. There's so much room to place words. There's so many words on your list. And then as you pigeonhole yourself and get further and further in the puzzle, you're looking more to fill the spaces, and there are fewer overlapped letters. So I'm going to look at these two, and I'm going to go ahead and choose to start with Rapunzel. Sure, great princess, love long hair. It's got some interesting letters in it, and it's a longer word. So I'll go ahead and I'll start and put that, let's see, sorry, I do not write straight. I have to turn the paper. You don't need to start left to right. I usually do. Folks have also asked in placing, do you count how many you have going forwards and backwards and diagonal down and diagonal up? I did at the beginning, and I found that that took a lot of time and didn't make much of a difference. Instead, I just try to pay attention to switching between those. So after you put that first long word, you look for pairs of letters that it might share with other words on your list. And so I'm looking at this EL or LE and look for a word that has those 2 letters together so I can get a nice overlap. And I did do this ahead of time. This isn't just jumping out at me. But I'm going over to European capitals, and I'm going to choose Valletta. That's the capital of Malta, tiny island nation where my grandmother's from. So if I can have Valletta in the puzzle, I'll be happy to do that. And so then I see how it fits in with this LEL, and I kind of count backwards. LETTA. So and I'm sorry, this is kind of hard to see with pencil and the light, but like I said, pencil is very important because either of these will change. And then the other thing I like to do, just like many of you may do when you're solving these puzzles, is I'm keeping track of what words I'm putting in the puzzle as I put them in. Because I didn't do this once and thought that I had it right, and I had too many words in one category and not enough in another, and I ended up not fully scrapping the puzzle, but having to change things. So I'll put Disney, I'll jot down Rapunzel, I'll put capitals, and jot down Valletta. And then when I'm working on this list, usually, this is actually very rare for me to have it printed out. I'm using Google Docs. But I'm not crossing them out or erasing them because I might need to change things, and then I might need to change things back and want to put in another word, so I'll leave them there. I may notice, and I don't have an example in this, but if I notice a word that I want to make sure I don't include, because it doesn't quite fit a category, but I could see someone arguing for a category, I will write right in that category, watch out for, I know one boy, I don't remember what category it was, but I needed to watch out for Lee, the last name Lee, because it was something historical that could have fit, and L-E-E, those three-letter words, can really sneak in there. All right, I'm going to switch back to the slideshow now, and I think I just covered some of this. Yeah, so prioritize your ones with the limited options, but otherwise place your words evenly between categories. And that is because as you get closer to the end of the puzzle, you can fudge things a little. If you realize, oh no, I still have 10 words to place, and I definitely don't have 10 words of spaces in this grid, the grid doesn't have to be a perfect hexagon. You can add a little row of triangles on the top and the bottom and sneak them in. Or if you're having the other problem, you could say you've used most of your words, but you still have a lot of blank space. You could say, all right, fine. This puzzle is 7 words from each category. This last year, I didn't have to do any of that, but I definitely did in the 2023 puzzles. There's one that's a little otter shaped. There was one that was 7 words in each category. It was because I got far enough into filling it in that I saw I can't solve the puzzle with the current rules, but I can tweak the rules and still make it be a puzzle that would be fun for people to play, and then I don't need to totally scrap this work. Make sure that there is no word that has all shared letters. This is a lesson I learned. I thought, oh yeah, it'd be nice if they all had individual letters, but does it really matter? And the answer that I learned from Puzzle 2 of 2023 is yes, it does. So in this example in the corner, the 2 categories that are important to note are European countries and mammals. And because the words llama and the word Italy has no unique letters to that word. So the Y of Italy is in cherry, the L is in Malta, the A is in Malta, the T is in tin, the I is in tin. It has no letters that are only Italy's. And that ends up being a problem, because you could then solve the puzzle by only finding 5 European countries. And the same thing happened with llama in that same puzzle. You could have found it with only 5. And yes, okay. It's still, folks got their code. They got it in the end. It worked out okay. But it bothered me because I wanted the puzzle to be, I wanted it to be perfect, which, again, that's it. Don't just try. You can want to have a perfect puzzle, but it will amaze you, even if you've had it tested by many people, what one thing's a new person can find. But you want to try for it. Again, with this in mind, use pencil, because you will need to make changes, and do not feel bad when you have to. That is part of creating the puzzle. In making these puzzles, if you do and you want to see them through to the end and give them to playtesters, you have to get really used to people telling you something you did was wrong. And it is hard, or at least it's hard for me, but it is how you make a better puzzle. And if, again, you're sending it out to 14,000 players, for example, you really want your playtesters to find those things first. And then when you're done, you've put in your 6 words in each category, or 7 if that's what it ends up being. You count your blank spaces, and you come up with a phrase. In the case of Summer Game, it was the code. But you come up with a phrase that has that many letters, and you, again, definitely using pencil it in. Be sure to not accidentally create new words when you put that in. That is my biggest puzzle downfall, is I will come up, and I also trying to come up with those phrases. I'm sorry the codes aren't more interesting. I'm both trying, but they gotta fit right in the puzzle, and they have to have exactly 7 letters. And don't have your heart set on having a specific phrase, because when your playtesters find a problem, which they will, the easiest way to usually solve those problems involves changing that code phrase. I would say in those blank spaces, I really try to not have any of them next to each other. But sometimes there'll be 2 of them next to each other, and I have learned to accept that. But more than 2, it's probably worth going back and tweaking your puzzle, because Usually then you could move things around, pick a 3-letter word or a 4-letter word in different spaces, because, as you probably know as people who play these puzzles, when you get stuck and you're close to the end, you're looking for those gaps where there's multiple letters blank in a row, and usually that's how you solve the puzzle yourself. And the goal is always to have people be able to solve the puzzle themselves. I'll say especially during summer game, because it's a big thing, and boy, oh boy, does my inbox get full with so many emails, and I love it when this summer, I learned a lot in the first summer, and I got many, many fewer Super Search help request emails in 24 than I did in 23. And part of that is because y'all learned how to do these puzzles. They weren't new. And part of it is that I learned how to make these puzzles better. So just know that your playtesters are important, and they will help you find things, but you can help yourself by making your puzzle more playable. So I've talked a lot about playtesting. Playtesting is a key part of summer game as a whole, not just the word puzzles. But it starts really early with word puzzles. The first thing is to pick the right playtester, particularly for the first person who looks at your puzzles. It needs to be someone who understands how the puzzle works, because they can't help you find where it's broken if they don't know what is broken and what isn't. If you're looking for people to play test your puzzles and you don't have someone who has played these past ones, I'd suggest giving them some puzzles from 2024, because those are the cleaner puzzles. I don't think I have any, I'm afraid to say this. I think all of the big 2024 mistakes got caught before they made it to players. But maybe I've blocked something out. And make sure they understand how it works. And make sure that they understand that part of their job is to find what the problems are, even if they are smart enough and get the puzzle enough to know that that wasn't right. So ask them to find those mistakes. For example, this was, I want to say, puzzle 2 of 23 with mammals. The word zebra, you can see diagonally, is in the puzzle. It is intended to be in the puzzle. But a lot of people thought they found zebra as Z-E-R-B-A. Or in this last puzzle, in puzzle 10, folks thought they found the word panda in our puzzle of the last puzzle of the year. But the letters were actually P-A-D-N-A. Both of those were pointed out to me by playtesters, some who accidentally thought that they'd found the word panda in the puzzle, and some who just noticed that it was a potential mistake. And it was really good for me to know those were there. I didn't change the puzzle. The puzzle, if anything, I kind of think those little kind of potential wrong turns make it more interesting. But it meant I didn't panic when I got the email from someone saying they found the word panda in the puzzle, or that the word zebra was misspelled in our puzzle. I was able to say, oh, take a closer look. So that's good to have that. Or to have your playtesters point out words that they think, well, it could fit this category. My goal when I am writing these puzzles and I'm coming up with the words is to have things very clearly, everything that's supposed to be there, very clearly belong. Now, some of those things, like we were talking about before this started, how many of you knew whale was an ungulate before this year? I didn't. But if you Google, are whales ungulates, or you Google a list of ungulates, whale is clearly there and correct. But there's things like with that things that fly. Okay, well, I was trying to come up with words of things that you really associate flying with. But you could argue that any specific type of bug, that name could be something that flies. Okay, yeah, you're right. But it wasn't in the spirit I thought. But that bug name still shouldn't be in the puzzle because it would confuse someone. Those are the kind of things that your playtesters will find. Or maybe they won't. Oh, I'm going to jump ahead and then I will go back to this problem. So this was another puzzle from last year. The category that gave me issue was breakfast, food, or drink. I probably had 45 people play test the puzzle before it went live. But many patrons found the word kefir, which, you know what, they're right. It's the drinkable yogurt. It totally is a breakfast food or drink. It's not something that I grew up knowing its existence. And it turns out my early playtesters are my parents and my family. So oftentimes, they don't find the initial mistakes because they taught me my worldview. They taught me how to talk. Like our shared vocabulary is there. And so know that if you can have a wider group of playtesters, especially playtesters who are different from you, that's great because they may catch these things. And this one really got me because it would have been so easy to fix. Because this I is not in any of the words of the puzzle. All I would have had to do was change the code word. And it wouldn't be in the puzzle. It's the easiest kind to fix. But you had to know it to fix it. And I think that is why I had that out of place in my slides. Because when they find mistakes, which they will, the easiest way to correct it is to start out by erasing your code letters. And erase the letters in any of your problem words. And then write down what category of words you erased them from. Because you think you'll remember, and you'll remember most of the time. But I definitely forgot once, and then added in and had 7 in one and 5 of the other, and it was just frustrating. So save yourself that time, write it down. And then you go back to your list of brainstormed words, and you see, okay, so I've got a space of 4 blanks here, and I need to come up with, let's say, looking at my list, I need to come up with another system of the human body. Oh no, they're all longer than 4 letters. Then you need to find a longer word in another category that doesn't have any shared letters. Write down that category, erase those words, pick one of your longer systems of the human body, put it in, and then find a shorter word for there. So it's a lot of then tweaking your puzzle pieces around. So by erasing those code letters, you're just giving yourself more blank spaces to work with. But that does mean in the end, you may now suddenly be looking for a code that has 7 letters instead of 12, and you need to completely change your word. So you just have to be willing to let things go, which is also, as many type A puzzlers are, it's probably really good practice to learn to let things go and go with the flow more. And then you start over with a new playtester. So you fix the puzzle. You may think, oh, I can give it back to the same person. But they already know. Even though they don't know how you've changed it, they know too many of the words in the puzzle. They know the area where the problem word was. Even if they're not trying to solve the puzzle faster, they already know. Their brain is spoiled. Got to give it to someone else. And then you just repeat and repeat and repeat until, I will repeat with our staff. So my playtesters, I start with my family, and then there's a group of about 6 to 8 AADL staffers who are big word people, who I then send it out to, one at a time. I learned that too. Send it out one at a time because one person finds a mistake, and you need those fresh eyes of the other folks. And then it goes from there to all of the Ann Arbor District Library staff. And then it goes to all of you, and then it's too late. But it's so having as much time and as many playtesters, then you get to a point where, oh, hey, I just gave this to 4 people in a row, and no one found anything wrong. I think it might be right. Now, being said, I don't know how many of you, I have the dream job. I get to be a librarian and then also write puzzles for work and then have a built-in audience that I can send them to. You may not have the same built-in audience, so deciding when your puzzle is ready, you may pick an earlier phase because you give it to a friend, they do it, they find a mistake even though you weren't thinking you were still in playtest mode. You can fix it and then still give it to a new friend. You can always refresh your puzzles. But, it is good to reach a point where you say, this one is done. And I usually would say when 4 or so people in a row can play it without finding problems. So that is kind of how you do this. So now I am going to have them turn off my microphone, and feel free, if you would like, you can sit and work on a puzzle. I have this list of brainstormed words that if you want to skip that step and just start with placement right now, do it. Take these. If you think, brainstorming words and categories sounds like fun, do that. Do a mix. I will say that I have not repeated a category yet, but I think this is going to be the year that changes, because that, for me, is the hardest part. Now that I've built enough of these puzzles, it's the coming up with different categories with a wide range in each puzzle without repeating. But even when I repeat a category, whether it is this summer or next summer, it's still going to be a different puzzle. It's going to be mixed in with other different categories. It's not going to be the same 6 words that were in the last one, because every time you're putting these together, you build something different. If all of you are making your puzzles from this word list, none of your puzzles are going to be identical. So there's lots of options. Before I do that, and then also hand out all of these things I just said written down, so that if you choose to do these more in the future, you've got it written down. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah?
About how long does it take you to create a puzzle?
Oh, that's a good question. About how long does it take me to create a puzzle? It's very rare that I start from nothing and finish with a complete puzzle. So it is hard for me to have an accurate guess. But I would say once I have my categories brainstormed, I probably can put one together in about an hour and a half. Longer, of course, if you count the play testing and the changing and all of that. In category brainstorming, it's hard to know, because I kind of work on it all the time. Anytime I think of something, I have a Google Doc. I write down the category idea. When I'm sitting at the reference desk and it's really slow, I'll start Googling lists of musicals with one-word names and writing those down, things like that. So that, I think, is actually what takes me the most time, is the coming up with the content, not the building of the puzzle. But I know the first time I built one, I think it took about 4 hours.
So, knowing, I'm looking that you're going to bring this in 2025, have you started puzzles for next summer already?
I am starting them this week. So the puzzles for this summer, I wrote between December and April of this last year. And so it's time for me to get going again. And because I haven't made one since April, I'm excited to do them again. I feel more fresh about it. That's the other thing, is this is really fun. I don't want this to stop being fun. There are aspects of jobs that you enjoy, but they stop being fun because you're being told to do it at a certain time and you have to. And I want to always love super searches. So I'll start early and pick away at them. But like I said, as long as I'm with the library, they'll be super searches, and I don't plan to go anywhere. So while I can't sign and say for sure they'll be here every year, I know I'm going to want to keep writing them, and it seems like we've got an audience who wants to keep playing them. So one a week during summer game. Yeah.
So, could you go back to the example of that you were handwriting with Rapunzel?
Yeah.
And with the capital? So, I'm confused about changes, because if you had to change Rapunzel,
Yeah.
then you would have to change Valletta too.
What I would do,
Does that become like a row of dominoes where you end up changing multiple things?
so you have to, sometimes it does, but I wouldn't necessarily have to change Valletta with changing Rapunzel. I'm realizing I told y'all to have good erasers. I didn't give myself one. But I would erase the R-A-P-U-N-Z, but the EL are now accounted for. So let's say there was some reason that I didn't want Rapunzel, but now I only have 5 or 6 letters here, or 7 if it happens to begin or end with an E. But then I can go back to my list and say, all right, so I'm looking for a Disney princess, 6 letters or fewer. I could put an Ariel, I could do Belle. It doesn't look like there's any that I could make use of that E. Because, Jasmine, that's only 7. That J is wide. So yeah, I could do Jasmin, and it makes use of that E there. But there is a lot of that. And so what I do after I fill the grid, and I've put my names, I can see the 6 in each category, is then brought this, even though I don't think, especially G. I talked for a long time, y'all. I don't know how much time you'll have to work on it here. But then I'll take my colored pencils, I'll have one for each category, and I'll circle each one so that when the time comes that I need to change one of these words, it's easier for me to see what letters are claimed by multiple words so that I don't accidentally get rid of them. Though I definitely have accidentally gotten rid of them and broken a puzzle more in fixing it. Just unfortunate, unless y'all have a better eye for details than I do. Maybe it'll never happen to you, but it definitely happens to me. Yeah?
So are you, if you've already gone and circled them and you realize you need to go back, I mean, are you starting on a fresh piece of paper?
So I will wait to circle until I've done the whole puzzle. And usually after I've done the puzzle in pencil, I'll move over to my computer and put it in print too, so that I don't have to rewrite all of it when I make changes. Then I can erase things on the computer version, print out a version with those blank spots, and fill it in that way.
And you're giving the digital copy to the playtesters?
Yes.
And so, sorry, go ahead. I want to follow up, because you give them, I mean, you have more time constraints because you got to get these done. Are you giving them like 48 hours?
Oh.
Get this back?
I'm doing a bad job of repeating the questions, because again, I know all in this room can hear, but I think we do have some folks watching on the stream. So the question was, how long do I give playtesters? I have not been giving deadlines, but the bonus of having either my playtesters being my mom or dad, so I can just not feel like I'm guilting them to be asking like, hey, have you had a chance to look at that yet? Then it goes to my coworkers who get to work on the puzzle on the clock. So I have not had issues with things being turned around quickly. Anything else? Yeah.
Okay, so when you go to put it on your computer,
Mm-hmm.
what program are you using?
All right, so you asked what program am I using when I go to put it on my computer. And this is where I think there is a better solution, especially for folks who are doing this on their own. I use a program called Affinity Designer. It's by Adobe. It's not well designed for this. It just happens to be the program that I have and the one that I knew how to use just enough. So I have all of these nested triangles that I have a blank document that I can just change the letters in each of them. I know that one person who from last summer started doing some. She did something with PowerPoint where she could more easily edit. And I think I heard you saying, this is Dan in the front row. He's done, I think you've sent me 4 puzzles. I've only done 2, but they're very good. And I think I also heard you say that you have some copies. You used a PDF editor?
Yeah, Nuance PDF.
Nuance PDF.
And if you want, if you give me your email, I'll send you my blank. It just has the letter X in every square. So you have to go in and delete the X and put in your
All right, that makes me feel better because that is similar. So Dan said he has the letter X in every square in his grid, and then you delete the X. I don't remember, gosh, because I haven't done one of these since April, but I also have a stand-in letter. I will also say, and this may be beyond what folks have, but after 2023, and I was getting so frustrated with these words sneaking in the puzzles multiple times, my husband is a software engineer. And he heard me talking about this, and he goes, you know, there's a solution to this. And because he is who he is, instead of just writing the program for me, he knew I knew a little bit of Python. So he helped me figure out how to write a super search program in Python where I could input in my completed puzzle, and it would spit out every word that was in the puzzle. And while it was tedious, it was also really helpful. It wasn't perfect because it only pulled the words from the dictionary that's on my computer, which does not have proper nouns, doesn't have a lot of slang or brand names, so things still snuck in. And I'm also going to say, if you're planning these for any wider audience, be careful with brand names. I had no idea how many brands of deodorant there were until that was one of the puzzles. And then people just kept finding stuff. So tread lightly there. But if you are interested in making it and you have gosh, I don't even remember what the program is, but you have some program that can parse a Python program and want that, I'll warn you, I'm not a software engineer. The code is probably way messier than it would be if someone who was an expert wrote it, but I'm happy to share that as well. Yeah?
Would that be a solution if you're worried about, four-letter words accidentally appearing in the puzzle?
Yes. So the question was, would that be a solution for words that you might not want in a puzzle, like swear words? Yes, as long as those swear words are in your dictionary. Which again, with slang, can't count on. Yes, that has been, that is another thing that playtesters, as long as they know that you want them to tell you when they find that, when they find something that seems a little bit off color, I'd always rather know than not know, especially for the audience that I'm putting puzzles out for. All right, well, we've got, first of all, thank you. I'm so glad you're here. We've got 10, 15 minutes or so if you want to work here. I will pass out the sheets of pre-done words. I will also say, if you are interested in getting or giving puzzles to other people, you can put your email address down on this. I have not yet figured out how we're going to do this. Because of course, as a library, we're very much, we keep information private and secure. And so I haven't quite figured out how to do this without me having to be the middleman always. So I can't promise it'll turn into anything. But if you want it to be on it, if it becomes something, you can leave your email address with me. And that's it. We'll pass out instructions, and feel free to take the blank grids that we have printed out at tables. It's also, if you go to the library website and look at the event for today, that we call our page nodes, that event node, the files are there. So you could download it and then just have it. All right, thanks.